welcome. Can you hear us?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I
Just
can
a
hear you. I can
question.
hear you. Welcome. Well, thank you for being here virtually. I know it's very early where you are. You're in New York right now, right?
No, I'm in Palo Alto.
Oh, in Palo Alto. Very cool. Oh, wow. So, okay, that means it's middle of
It's
the night. Actually, it's not early. It's middle of the night.
exactly, but like I'm very happy to be here and yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Nice
Thank
to meet
you.
you.
Thank you. Very nice to meet you too. I've been looking forward to this conversation all of this festival and preparing it up until now. And I kind of want to start at the beginning, right? So when I was talking, we were kind of setting this up. There was a talk about you were always interested in philosophy and science, kind of just like to spy the world and see what's out there. Like where did your journey begin? Like how did you know that this is a path you're going to take?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, so when does philosophy begin? Yeah, I think it begins for all of us when we're little kids. When we look around and ask ourselves, "Oh, what's going on here? Where does this come from? Yeah, who am I? Are other people like the same?" So that's probably when it starts. And we share the same name, but my version of our name is Polish, so it's Lukasz basically. Or the Polish even say Lukasz, but not many people can spell this first part reliably, so I made it simpler, Lukasz. And so I grew up in Poland and then moved as a small kid to Germany. And I think this is a good preparation for entrepreneurship and also for philosophy, because if you experience two very different cultures, back then it was still socialism, so not only different cultures, different societal systems. And that was all part of my path. And in Poland, it was still fairly religious. That would kept people together in socialism. And in Germany, there was like very scientific, natural science, cosmology, astronomy. So those have been the influences inspiring me to become an entrepreneur, yeah? And to be able to contribute to this wonder of science, so to say, scientific progress. That's what makes humans special. You know?
So you think the multicultural aspect definitely played into that, having both the German, the Polish side, that was definitely a big influence in making that path towards the entrepreneurial journey?
Yes, I think so, yeah. I mean, like in the end, we as humans, we are like complex adaptive systems. I think it's one of the technical terms, yeah. So it's like almost like a computer program where the environment programs your brain, right? And you get like very different inputs. So, and if you get very different inputs, you see very different worlds, and you see like each and own world is viable in itself, right? So it's consistent and viable. So that also shows you that things are variable. They don't have to be as they are. If you would experience only one system, it's less there. And I think today it's a little bit more obvious that things are not supposed to be as they are, because of like change is so rapid and so fast. Yeah? But it didn't used to be the same. And one of my recent experiences, like we're also working with Asia, with some businesses in China, etc. They're even faster. They saw their society change so rapidly. Yeah. They're all futurologists by now, because if they see things can change very fast. Yeah, be it like some stuff that we're working on right now, be it like urban air mobility, flying cars, basically. Can you imagine this to happen? No matter what the answer is, yes or no, if you would be in China, it would be easier for you to imagine, because if you saw your society changing so fast.
It's the speed with which it happens. I mean, let's take it to your educational journey in that sense. You studied IT and economics, and you kind of immediately jumped into the whole entrepreneurial field, right? Can you maybe walk us through what that was like for you? Kind of what was the first one? How did you decide that, you know what, I don't want to think about it, I want to do it?
No, it's very simple. If you want to have an impact, there are various paths how to make an impact. For example, you could become a scientist, you could become a politician, deciding about resources, where the resources go. That was the naive thinking back then. So I looked even at politics for half a year and quickly found out it's not a meritocracy. It's really hard to make an impact there, at least for me. And then the next logical one is like to become like an entrepreneur, like an inventor, entrepreneur. That was the idea. And so I looked at various degrees like computer science and business, mathematics and business, physics and business. So always like these double majors where the idea was like the technology brings the innovation and the business side brings the craftsmanship of like building companies. Yeah, that's it. And then ended up with computer science and business to some extent because there was a great initiative on campus. This was in Paderborn. It was ranked very highly in this field in computer science and business, but also had an initiative on campus called Campus Consult. Yeah, so like a consulting club, so to say. But the largest in Germany back then, and I think they did like millions of revenue as a club, as a student club. Imagine you have a few millions of revenue. This was back then Deutschmark. But
It's crazy.
This gives you a lot of resources, so really experience a great training there. Yeah, it's very simple stuff. So it was less like this, less like a traditional. You sit in a lecture hall and listen to someone talking about business, but it was very hands-on. Yeah, we got into like making projects, real-world projects, real responsibility. A few projects that we delivered to the customers were not successful, for example. So real-world failure. That prepares you pretty well. So it's like a tailor-made MBA, and almost I can.
What was the first project that you remember? Like, what was one that stuck out? Like, if you think about back to that time right now, like, what project do you think of?
I mean, I just mentioned that one failed. Yeah, so this I remember this. This was like about like we had to do a market study like for seals, for sealing systems. There was like some sort of rubber systems and whatnot, like sealing, and there was like a traditional company like in the area, and they wanted to use us to help to figure out a strategy, and we couldn't see the wood for the trees. Yeah, we couldn't see the wood for the trees. We didn't. We were like 4 people in the team. Yeah, it was fun. One of them was like sort of reliable. Yeah, so even to the presentation became late because we relied on his car. Yeah, he was partying the night before. So we had not only bad results, we were late. This in like a conservative German business environment didn't go down so well. This was one example of a failed project. And one example of one that was successful is like we did something for Siemens Business Service, like we did like a website and content management system for them, and that was really hard. Yeah? And initially the student club, they got this request and they said like, it's too hard, we have to turn it down. And I was like, what? Siemens wants something from us. It's a great brand, it's a reference, and we turn it down, we're not able to do this. And like, yeah, and let's find a way how we can do this. Yeah? And then we found a way how we could do this. Basically, we took their request, what they wanted, and said like, we can't deliver that, but we can deliver that a little bit less, like a minimum viable product, you would say today. And maybe they say yes, and they said yes, and this was mostly a great experience. Mm-hmm.
I imagine that built a lot of that experience. And then I want to move into the entrepreneurial journey with the first things you tried and started, and then Spreadshirt, I think, is one that was kind of flew from the beginning onwards. Can you talk about how that sort of happened, how that existed, how you came up with that idea?
It's very simple. I mentioned politics briefly, yeah, and this was like during this politics. We also printed T-shirts for one of the parties, and that's how I met like a T-shirt printing company. Yeah, and this was fascinating. This was like a real businessman. Yeah, he had his own company. He was a young man and printing T-shirts for fresh graduates and stuff, and wanted to expand his business. And this is like. With this student consulting, we sold him projects, and later on, he wanted to buy bigger machines. So we did a financing plan for him how to buy these bigger machines. And long story short, this is how I got exposed to the textile printing industry. Yeah? So like you see real world problems, because it's like if you want to become an entrepreneur, I don't know how it is today. Back then, it's like people had only like ideas about the next restaurant, food, stuff that somehow is part of your experience. Yeah. So in getting into like these industries and these real world problems, you expose yourself to real world problems and see solutions. Yeah. In that case, put one and one together. This is the textile printing industry. This is the new internet that's coming. You have web-based interfaces and whatnot. And this should enable you to print single t-shirts in high quality, fast turnaround. That was the innovation, yeah? Single one-offs, you can order one t-shirt. You get it in high quality, even a dark t-shirt. Back then, there were only like cheap digital prints, so to say, on white t-shirts. They would look and feel awful. Yeah, we innovated that. And then fast turnaround. And then we combined this with, you can get your own online store. Yeah? So people could get their own online store, no upfront costs. We would print on demand, single one-offs, etc. So that was the start of Spreadshirt, yeah? And yeah.
And with that was just the beginning. That was one of the kickoffs. I mean, I think it was mentioned early on that you did a couple of different things. I guess from projects, it turned into a company, and then StudiVZ. I think that's one of the big one that many will remember in that sense. What was the genesis of that? How did you start that? And I mean, I know you sold it. I think one of the things we talked about getting ready for this was the selling too early is a topic that definitely came up. Can you walk us through the genesis of StudiVZ?
Yeah, first the genesis, we call it a little bit cornerstoning. Yeah, it's same thing. You go to the textile printing industry, you see the problems or what works, and then you can do other things. And like with a Spreadshirt, the idea was like, if we don't go to the United States quick, then the United States will come to us. Yeah. The companies, they are larger, it's a .com, remember, right? Big role models, all from the US. If we don't do anything, they will come and crush us. Yeah? So let's rather go there and rather than wait. Yeah? So we expanded to the United States with Spreadshirt. And as part of that, we also like looked for advertising, where can we sell t-shirts and whatnot, and been just exposed to the environment there. And so Facebook, like really early on, when it was still like a website only for students, you could only register with an edu email address, etc. And then a team of like Spreadshirt alumni, so to say, like interns, whatnot, like formed around this idea, and like we executed really, really well as a team, so to say, in the first stages, and yeah, had this amazing success of it was back then the largest website in Germany. The older people here in the room will still know it. We went from 0 to 10 million users within 10 months, I think, after launch, and then sold it like also, yeah. And it was a great success back then, to some extent. But is it really? It was like a I don't know how to pronounce this, like Furian, Führungssieg, right? Not really a victory, Furian victory, I think it's called, something like that. And yeah, for two reasons. First of all, we could have sold it to Facebook. There was an offer on the table, so like 7-ish% of Facebook for the website. Amazing, would have been amazing. Back then, it wasn't so obvious that Facebook will be the big winner. Yeah? You also had companies like MySpace that we also don't know about. So it's about like Facebook executed really flawlessly. So that was one mistake, and then the other was like to sell at all. I was thinking before this conversation around it about this. So right now I'm in Palo Alto. Where's YouTube? Where's Instagram, for example? Yeah, could we have used StudiVZ to become the next Instagram? Yeah. Could we have used StudiVZ to become like an alternative to Facebook? Maybe a more ethical Facebook, maybe a Facebook that takes care more about the well-being of the users and is more long-term, stuff like this, yeah? So all those opportunities are bygone, yeah? Also the commercial opportunities and whatnot. So StudiVZ, you will not know it today. Instagram and YouTube, at least you know, yeah? But the original founders of these companies, they're no longer around. From what I know, at least not prominently involved in these businesses. So,
I mean, from what I understand, even the Instagram founders now, in retrospect, do realize they probably sold too early as well, in that sense, right? That's
sold too early, or like sold at all,
or
right?
sold it all.
What you do as an entrepreneur, and like this is sort of the story. When I was a young student, a young entrepreneur, like there was always this role model of like selling your company, yeah, and this was something that's celebrated, and that's the exit, and that's something that you even work towards. That's crazy, yeah. So we call it the exit lie. Yeah? It's a lie that it's desirable to have an exit. An exit is a defeat. To sell your company is a defeat. You're usually like, I mean, there might be exceptions to a rule, but like usually you are the best owner of your company. Yeah, you're DNA, you're the soul. You know what it needs, and you can nurture it. So like, no exit is the exit. Yeah, or like large independent company become public at some point, etc. That's something what we achieved, for example, with Delivery Hero. Yeah, simply hands down the largest success of my career. Yeah, established that. So that's what's desirable, and that's
that was an IPO last year, if I recall, right? Delivery Hero.
Yeah, it's now like 4 years ago.
Or 4 years. Yeah, COVID. The time flies. But 4 years ago.
Time flies.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. I'm still in 2018.
But like last year, it got like promoted to the DAX, so maybe that's what you refer to.
Okay.
Yeah? And it was the first German internet company being part of the top 30 companies. So
and when you said, the owner in the founder sense is still the best to own it and run it on that level, after the IPO, did you maintain a certain stake in the company? Did you divest? Or what was your philosophy there? Because an IPO is an exit, but it can be like a very open-ended exit, depending on what you want to do, right?
Yeah, so like just before the IPO, I still invested. Yeah, so I was like part of the company needed debt. I still provided debt at the IPO. I didn't sell a single share, and a year after, I still have not sold a single share. Yeah? And then I slowly started to sell down and to reinvest in other, in more technology, different technology things that we're doing now. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that makes sense. And speaking of investment, right? I mean, you start, it's the opportunity cost as well that comes up. And I feel like we were talking about it with a previous speaker about the restlessness after you've done one thing or another. And, to take some time off and find something else to do. I mean, I was convinced, I'm still convinced, he's going to do something sooner than he thinks. But I think for you started doing a lot more investments, especially in the past year. What is your investment philosophy behind that? Like, what took you to be like, this is an area I want to focus on. I want to do more on the investment side, maybe versus starting something completely from scratch. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's like the basis of it is like a better world via technology. Yeah, so we want to use technology to a better world. That's one part of the story. The other part of the story is like to build large independent companies. That's what the goal is. They have to provide genuine value to society. Yeah, that is sort of like long term. That is in line with the trends, in line with what the world needs. So genuine value. Then one pattern is like next order of magnitude. Yeah, Delivery Hero is now worth like 30 billion-ish. So like, what's the next level? Yeah, the next level is always an order of magnitude. So at a zero. So like, it would be like how to build things that can be like 300 billion basically, and this is like almost like an inconceivable number for us in Europe, because if there was not a single company of at least my entrepreneurial generation that made it like that far. I think the first now starting to scratch at the 100 billion mark, but like the world showing that it's possible. Yeah, so where is our Facebook, Apple, Google, Amazon, whatnot? Yeah, so that's what inspires us, the next level, and like to build it like globally, and in the specific fields that we invest in, and then invest like, what does it mean? Like, this is not we're like a technology holding, so it's not a fund or anything. There's no lifetime of a fund. There's also, from that perspective, no exit pressure. We invest across like all the stages, so it could be like as early as we start a company ourselves. Yeah, we just started a couple. Then we invest early, like could be a seed check, yeah, but it also could be Series A, Series B, all the way through like pre-IPO. So that's the stage story. And then the content story is like digital, that's the heritage. Then we have mobility, specifically next generation aviation. This is going to be amazing, big, brings us as a civilization to a next level, literally.
You were actually,
and then the third one is...
You were in New York just for the Archer Aviation IPO, right, on Monday? I was informed.
Exactly, yeah. So Archer Aviation is one of these urban air mobility companies. And then the third, so like we have digital, we have mobility, specifically aviation, and then we have what we call like clean, abundant energy, and that's also the next level. It's like the energy of the future, yeah, which we believe it's a there are many new technologies. For example, we work on battery technologies. Solar is part of the mix, but also nuclear will be there again. So we believe in new nuclear, which is fusion, which never existed on Earth, but like we're working towards that. It was part of the reasons here also to be in the US, and then also fission even, yeah, fission that we as kids learned is all dangerous and all dirty. It does not have to be. Yeah, it depends on like how you build your reactor. What is the reaction chain that you choose? How you operate, how you process these nuclear reactions, so to say. Yeah. So contrary to what we've been taught as kids, well, I was taught as a kid, it doesn't have to be unsafe, and it doesn't have to produce waste. So that's the universe, so to say, of our activities. And then you said like we recently started to invest. We always did, yeah, but it's a lot of stuff is like below the surface, so you don't see it. And then only after like 5, 6, 7 years it starts to emerge, and then you have the impression, oh, they started to invest now. No, they started to invest 5 years ago.
It's what they say about the overnight success took 10 years, right? That's always the thing that goes back to. Actually, I want to talk about the energy investments very quickly, because a lot of what you just mentioned reminds me of a book that Bill Gates wrote around how to avoid a climate disaster. I think he mentions a lot of the points you brought in there around solar and fusion. What companies do you look for in that sense? I mean, many of them are still very early on. They're research-based companies. How do you deal with making investments in these areas?
So, first of all, it really helps to be interested in the technology and the science, yeah, because this enables you to ask the right questions, and this enables you to drill down, like so to say, like to the nature of things, to the physics of things, and in the end, this is the basis for it, right? You can't. Some scientists like to say you can you can fight with physics. You can maybe fight with politics. Could be hard, but like with physics, definitely you can't. Yeah, you sort of can't change it, but you can evolve it, and you can find new things. Yeah, and you always find new surprising things that you didn't expect before, and to some extent you don't expect them because of politics, so to say, or because give you 2 examples. One simple example that we all know: when I was a small kid, they would tell me like, if you're sick, please cough in your hands, cover your mouth, cough in your hands, right? Today we know we spread all the viruses, so it makes no sense. Very simple. Very simple example. But then one other was like peak oil. Yeah, at some point the oil will be gone and we will be depleted of oil. So that's why we need to find new energy sources. Yeah. Today I know, no, that's not true. It's very simple, relatively simple to synthesize new oil. We can make as much oil as we want. Yeah? We have to solve the CO2 point with that, right? If you then burn it, etc., you put CO2 in the atmosphere. Depends how you make the oil, but like this you can do. So there are surprising solutions to all of these questions. For example, what replaces oil? What's the next aviation fuel? Yeah, when you're working in aviation, what are the reactions in nuclear, etc. So there's something surprising new answers. But back to your question, first you drill down into science, you're able to ask the right questions, and then you learn. Yeah? And then you learn, you compare. For example, we invested in one fission company, so splitting the atom. It's called Seaborg in Denmark. I didn't want to invest in fission companies. I wanted to invest in a fusion company and to understand the field better. Like, hey, you want to invest in fusion, you better understand fission. Yeah? And my team they've been even more biased than myself against nuclear. Yeah, they've been like, we will not touch it, but we maybe see what we can learn. And we ended up talking with 10 of them. Yeah? And when you talk with 10 of them, patterns start to emerge. And when one of the 10 is doing something different, and all of a sudden you have the comparison, you see like how clunky the others are, and you see like, wow, this one is really elegant. It's like mathematics, where you have like an elegant solution to a problem, or like computer science. So in the end, we ended up investing, yeah? And then it opens a new field, because if you get exposed to the problems, then the next will be like, okay, what's the supply chain of this? What's this, that? Regulatory problems, and it's really hard, yeah. But I believe that the time is ready. We either need to stop consuming, which is a hard proposition, or we need to find ways to consume clean, and ultimately energy.
To tie that back in on the aviation side, one thing I wanted to talk to you about is sustainable aviation fuels. I think that's a very interesting topic. I'm at a mobility venture fund in the U.S., and it's something that we think a lot about as well in the aviation context, because electric planes, obviously at the moment, a bit of a difficult sale. So, what is your view on? You mentioned it, synthetic fuels, renewable A1 jet fuel. What are your thoughts on that, and do you have any investments in that area?
So I believe it's transition technologies, so to say. I don't know the answer yet, is my simple answer. Like, first of all, yes, you can build a biofuel, but like to build the biofuel clean, the energy to produce the biofuel needs to be clean. Yeah? Either you use a lot of soil if you use plants, but then you cannot put it to alternative use. Maybe like worst case, you even chop the wood for that. Yeah? Chop down the forest to build sustainable aviation fuel. Super energy inefficient way of doing things. Yeah. Although theoretically you take out the CO2 first that you then put in later. So I don't know yet. Yeah, I rather right now to offset some of the carbon footprint that we create with our aviation, be it electric or non-electric, because also electric creates CO2 with the current battery technologies and the cycle life and whatnot. My solution for now is like, let's rather protect forests from being chopped down. Yeah? And then later on, it translates again in energy. So we need to build your sustainable aviation fuel clean, you need to have a clean original energy source. Yeah? And this brings us again back to like either like very large surfaces of solar and whatnot also have their disadvantages. You need a lot of surface, what are the materials that are going in, etc. Or we find a way to finally unlock the atomic age. Yeah, and make this safe and clean. And again, like it's possible. Yeah, and Bill Gates is saying this since 15 years. It's nothing new. Only nobody will listen to Bill Gates. Yeah, he was like too rapacious during his Microsoft times or whatnot. And I don't know. It's like not people don't listen to him. Plus, they did not have to listen. It was easy to look away. Right? There was no pain. This oil comes out of the ground. It's so cheap and it's so convenient. So. But now things change. So now there is a pain. But the answer to your question, I think, like two answers. One, we need to find ways to produce this energy clean. Then we can produce the sustainable aviation fuels clean, and then they really take out of the atmosphere what they later put in. Or, and this goes back to the story of coming into your hands. Maybe there are like completely different alternatives that we have not thought about yet. Yeah. And then you sit here and think like, no, there's nothing. I mean, like this industry is 60 years old. Oil is the best energy density, the best this, the best that. And maybe it's hydrogen, yeah, or maybe not. Yeah, maybe there's even a third thing, or a fourth thing, or a fifth thing that we need to find. And so far we didn't look for it even, yeah, because it was too convenient. So one other of my favorite stories in this, like not to look for things, is like Discovery of America by Mr. Columbus, allegedly. And at the same time, in the same period, there were like large fishing fleets of Basque fishermen, so the Spanish Basque, the northern region, and they had like huge fleets of, huge fishing fleets, fishing off the coast of Newfoundland. They just would not brag about it because then the trade secret would be gone. So that's about like discovering new things. Sometimes they're even there. Who knows? Maybe someone has it already, just not sharing it.
It makes sense. I think Henry Ford famously once said, if you asked people what they wanted, they would have told you it's a faster horse, right? I mean, I think that's one of the quotes I always think on that level. And
or a blue horse, then you would be.
Or a blue horse, right? Because they only had black horses in that case. The first Model T only came in black. We do have time for one more question, and I just want to give this to you as like a closing question. Where does it go from here for you? Like, what are the next steps? What do you see happening in the next 5 years in your life?
Yeah. So right now the aviation will continue. So like So you mentioned Archer. We're also like supporters of Volocopter in Europe. And Zapata is an amazing company. Yeah, Zapata Racing. We'll see more of that. Working on batteries, that's Theon. So like the next step will be this, and then on the horizon is this clean, abundant energy. That's number one, and then the third thing is like increasingly social entrepreneurship. So don't don't wait to retire first and then say like, oh, now I'm doing social, but like do it on the side. So like we're trying to dedicate more and more of our resources to this, starting with basically with science education is the first one, and then the next one is what I mentioned, is like this preserving forests as a CO2 offset, and then apply what we are able to do, our entrepreneurial talent, to sort of like non-profit organizations. So it's yeah, the next level of capitalism. That's the frontier. I think that's where the world moves towards. Yeah?
A full change. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talking to all of us here. And I know your probably next step is going to be to go to bed, because I'm assuming it's roughly 3 in the morning.
No, I will be on back to Europe in the next few days, so it doesn't even make sense.
Okay, so you don't have to change the time then. Well, thank you for taking the time and being here with all of us virtually, and have a safe flight back, and best of luck with all the ventures.
Who knows? Maybe I go by boat like Greta. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.